Alright, so we're trying to put these links, power distribution and shunts together and lay things out so that we can get our solar put in. This is going to be the back panel of the compartment, side panel, and then I'm going to do another side panel. Started out this morning by cutting some wood, putting some carpet on the wood so it gives it a clean finished look. Now I'm just putting these shunts together and going to go ahead and get them laid out and see how it's going to hook up. Just kind of doing some prep work before I actually start doing the wiring. So we've got Victron links distributors, a shunt, some DC to DC converters, and a breaker box, and some other stuff we're going to put on a little bit. So right now we're just putting these together. I put my first two together, and now I'm going to put this other distributor on the shunt so that it can all be lined up and ready to go. Basically what's going to happen is that our batteries are going to connect to here. This is going to monitor the voltage usage, battery usage, and then this is where our loads are going to connect to. We also have to connect the charge controller to it as well, but we're not there yet. What we'll end up doing is running a pair of cables out from here into the breakers, from the breakers to the DC distribution, and then this goes to the 12 volt because this side of it's going to be 24 volt. The breaker box set there. You want to make sure that none of your wires are going to move around and touch, especially the grounds and the positives. And I'm sure I like the way that one's sitting there. I ran it on top because I didn't want it close to the ground, but I don't like the way that it sits there. So, let's see if I can do something different. Gives you a nice neat wire loom, and you can continue doing that throughout the whole thing. I'm going to do another one down here so that you have a nice clean path for the wires to go down. And on this one down here I'll also include the other wires that are in the mix. I just realized I don't have my terminals out here yet. So, first thing you're going to do is gently cut off the insulation and try not to nick the wire. It kind of takes a little bit of feel for it, so that you're not digging deep into the wire, because you don't want to nick and cut wires off. I tend to, as you see, I didn't cut all the way through, and then I'll just kind of try to get real close, just to where that inner white one will break off, and I don't end up with a bunch of wires broken off, or I lost one right there. But I don't end up with a bunch of threads that are broken off or scarred. Then we've got to find our terminal lugs. Got my terminal lugs. What we're going to do is find the appropriate guide for them. And that was not going to cut it. When you buy the Chinese kits, they don't generally have the right sizes. You have to convert them. You can either have a conversion chart or you can eyeball it. This one looks like the right one. This kit is a hydraulic crimper. What you do is you pull the pin out, you slide the dies out, drop them on the ground, all that good stuff, and then try to put it back so that I don't lose them. Slide one die in facing up, and here's the other one die in facing down. Slide this pin back in, that's what it's going to push against. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put your terminal in there. And I generally, before I start messing with the cable, I'm going to pump this up where it's holding the terminal just lightly. So now you can see that it's got the terminal in there. Just a little bit more. It's kind of an awkward tool to use here. And you're going to take your wire, slide your wire in there. Once you get your wire in there, you can just start crimping it down. I always hold the wire in there. In fact, you can see that way it doesn't try to creep back out. Push it down to where it's almost closed, and then what I'm going to do is release it. And you can see it kind of makes a little wing here that you can either file off, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it in the crimper. Once it's back down in there, and I'm going to crimp from basically 180 degrees out, and I'm going to see if I can crush that down a little bit. So now that I got a good grip on it, I can go ahead and crimp it down. These cables, you really want to make sure you got a nice tight crimp. It basically creates a solid wire in there. The reason why you want a nice tight crimp is so that you don't have any looseness in there, you don't generate a big buildup of heat. Now, I didn't put my heat shrink on there pre-crimping, so nice heat shrink. Put some heat shrink on there and melt it down. This much heat shrink is probably overkill, but whatever. It'll be okay. Now I'm going to cut these off to length once I figure out exactly how they're going to route in the space that they're going to go to. Alright, so now it's time to put the heat shrink on some of the cables we're making. So We went ahead and crimped the terminals on. Now we slide the heat shrink down here where it should be. Heat gun, Harbor Freight heat gun. And we start to shrink it. So at the end of the process, that big heat shrink should shrink down to a nice tight cover to protect the end of that wire. And this heat shrink is double wall, so you can see it's really thick, and it's got glue on the inside. So we're going to do the rest of this on these cables, and we'll continue doing so on all the cables that we make.